Hello everyone, welcome to another riveting edition of Books and Banter, your Medina Library's video to blog as to what the experts are reading. I am your host, Eric Lucius, coming to you from the fiction area today, and I'm very happy to have Suzie with us, our newly minted teen supervisor, and she is going to talk about some young adult dark mysteries, I think was the theme you sent me. Some wonderful books, so I'm going to turn it over to Suzie, and what you got? What did you bring?
Well, you know, teen supervisor, I do read lots of teen books, but that doesn't mean it cannot be appropriate for adults. Whenever I do the online book discussion that we have on our Facebook page, I tend to talk solely about the teen books that I'm reading. I think both of the reads I'm going to talk about today would be totally appropriate for any adult. They're both very dark, they're both very mysterious. I am going to start with The Diviners. The Diviners, this is the audio edition, but the book itself is a big, chunky book. It's like 600 some pages. And it is by Leva Bray, who's one of my absolute favorite authors for teens. She is amazing, and one thing that she does really, really well is she creates all sorts of different characters. They're really, really believable. She writes about boys, she writes about girls, she writes about different time periods. Sometimes there's mysticism to them, sometimes they're very realistic, but they're always believable. And I think that's really hard to create an authentic teen character that you really want to get to know. The Diviners is like the first in going to be a series, so it really sets things up well. I have my cheat sheet on the back here. The characters are all very unique, they're all imperfect, they're all really, really colorful, but you really, really want to get to know them. Even though it's a really long book, I'm a sucker for good character development. And the characters here are all really, really different, but you really want to get to know them. So it's the right amount of development because it keeps you wanting to read, it keeps you wanting to go on for the series, but it's not too quick. I think what you find in a lot of teen fiction is they create these characters, and it happens so quick you don't believe it, you don't care about them as much, and in this one you do. It's just the right amount of character development. I don't think it's too long for teens. It gets you started, it makes you really, really want to know what's going to happen in the rest of the series. It really does a wonderful job at building the suspense. And what we have is we have Evie, and this takes place in the 1920s, and they're in Manhattan. And Evie was living at home with her parents, and she's kind of a troublemaker, and she gets into some trouble. She accidentally lets something fly at a party, and it has to do with this sort of magical ability that she has, but nobody knows that she has it. So her parents think she's just causing trouble. They send her off to Manhattan to live with an uncle. Well, the uncle is the owner of this like mysterious museum of the occult and things like that. So it kind of has this historical aspect to it. It's taking place during the jazz era in 1920s Manhattan, and nobody knows that Evie really does have this sort of magical power. Well, what starts to happen is you start to weave different parts of the United States, different parts of the world, these different teenagers who all have their own little special sort of dark superpower.
Okay.
All of them are imperfect. All of them are kind of meaning well, and they all slowly start to cross over and link together. So it's really, really cool the way they build the story. You really want to keep reading and read the rest of the series. So that's The Diviners.
Very cool, very cool. It clocks in, you mentioned kind of big chunky, I think it clocks in around 600 plus pages.
Yep.
Do you think it could be not necessarily too long, but are there wasted words? Are there extra pages in your opinion? I mean, how are you going to get bogged down in it with some of that?
Leva Bray writes big books. She won a Prince Award for Going Bovine, which is also huge.
Okay.
Maybe once in a while, like she does this suspense building, which is really, really good. That keeps you just turning the page, where it sounds a little redundant, especially because at one point it's one of the best villains that you'll ever meet, Naughty John.
Okay.
And she's just building this like scene with Naughty John. Naughty John does his work with his apron on, and she repeats it so much. But I think a lot of the repeating has to do with building that suspense. So no, I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
I mean, it's a reader. It's a book for a reader. So a young teen who maybe is more of a reluctant reader, this might not be the book for them.
Okay, very cool. Not having read the book, but obviously the setting, New York in the 20s. I'm a big fan of books that use setting as almost like a major plot point. So the language and the phrases from the 20s is used effectively. Do you like how she used it? I mean, did it work?
It works. It works well, and that's what she does wonderful. Because like that author, she takes you everywhere in all her books. And in this one, it takes you to the South. It takes you, where there's different things with races going on, but then it takes you to the 1920s and the speakeasies and the jazz era, and they use a lot of that language and a lot of like the phrases that I think would be cool for teens to read because they don't know these phrases, but you hear it again and again. It's very believable. They say it naturally. The characters use it naturally. So yeah, I love it, and I think that's a really effective use. The city of Manhattan is a great device to have in the story, so I think it's very effective.
Very cool, very cool. Read-alikes, similar authors, anything like that?
I mean, I would suggest other Leva Bray books for sure. A Great and Terrible Beauty, part of the Gemma Doyle trilogy, is another Leva Bray, and again, big, chunky, a little bit of the dark and the mysterious, but really believable characters who are human, and that's that magical realism where it kind of gets you into, yeah, there's these real life things going on in actual parts of history, but there's that little bit of magical element to them as well. So I would suggest the other Libra Bray books.
Okay, okay. Just an adult book off the cuff. Cabinet of Curiosities by President Child, because you got that Cabinet of Curiosities, the Curiosity Museum. This thing would be a nice pair. A wine. Speaking of pairing, wine.
Because it's a teen book, a Shirley Temple.
Well played.
And it would go well in a speakeasy.
Okay, very cool. Okay, what else did you bring? You got another one?
I have another teen book.
Okay.
This is not the audio, this is the actual book. And this is called This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Opel. He's also another kind of epic teen writer. He does a lot of different, what's it called? I can't even think of what the word is now. But he does a bunch of teen books that are sort of like scientific.
Okay.
He does a lot of science fiction aspects to it. This is very gothic, and it's a prequel to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. For all those lit nerds that are adults who studied Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you're going to love this book. It is definitely appropriate for teens. It has some very adult themes, but nothing that is inappropriate for a teen by any shape of the imagination. It's mysterious, it's suspenseful, and it follows Victor Frankenstein in Geneva as a 17-year-old, and his cousin Elizabeth, who's grown up with him, who's been adopted, so they're not related, and his twin brother Conrad. And he and Conrad have your typical sort of angsty teenage twin relationship. They love each other, but they hate each other. They are constantly competing with one another, but they would do anything for each other. And they, all this stuff is kind of going on. It takes place in the 1700s. It has all of the same characters, many of the same characters that you eventually get to in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It even it made me want to reread Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So I started looking at the Cliff Notes again. And there actually are quite a few characters in here. So young Victor is healthy and Conrad is not. So Conrad gets very, very ill, and he starts to learn about this secret library that his very rich family kind of has in their house.
Okay.
And they accidentally find it one day, just these teenagers, as teenagers like to explore these kinds of situations, and they're told not to be in the dark library. That it's this old library that has alchemy books, and it's historical, but it's meant to be sealed. Nobody's to be in it.
Okay.
And they learn about all these, hush-hush ways of science. And it kind of brings in the magic part of it, but they're trying to sell it in this book, just like they do in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that it's all about the science. But maybe you shouldn't be messing with that kind of science. And when Conrad gets sick, Victor decides, well, I've got to help my brother. And then there's Elizabeth, who's the cousin, who they're both kind of eyeing for. So it wants to be a love triangle, but it's not a love triangle. It's not your typical Twilight situation. It's very smart. It's very well written. It's really cool hearing about Geneva and the different places that they travel, as they're going en route to catch all these special things that they need for the magical elixir that's going to hopefully fix Conrad, or won't it? And if they give it to him, is it really going to hurt him more than help him? You just don't know.
Right.
So it's a really good book.
Excellent, excellent. You kind of touched upon this, I think, at least hinted around with it, about, should you be messing with science? It's Opal, is that his name?
Opal.
Opal, yeah, he's a Canadian author. It kind of touches upon, some of these moral dilemmas, religion, magic, medicine, science, all that good stuff. Do you think it's too heavy for younger teens? Is it enough to keep an adult's interest? Where do you think it falls in there?
I think it's subtle. I think some teens might miss some of the themes that are on here, but not enough that they're not going to still love the story and the adventure and the action and the idea of this kind of dark scientific debate that's going on between the twins. It talks about one of the main characters being Catholic and how her religion is very important to her, and it's almost setting it up like you're going to see more of that. This is going to be a trilogy. So Victor is 17. There's 2 more books to follow before you even get to the traditional Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Okay.
So you can tell they're going to build more on it. Right now it's very subtle. I think it's appropriate for teens. I think that adults would probably get more out of that part. I got more out of it. But those sophisticated teen readers that are in high school are going to love it too. And I think they will pick up on those themes.
Okay. All right. Very cool. I'm going to throw out a wine pairing, the actual one. I know it's a teen book, but this is like a screaming Pinot Noir to me, like a nice one from Sonoma County in California, which is hitting its peak right now. It's very fruity, lots is going on, very deep, it's got that depth, that darkness to it a little bit, especially if you get something off in Russian River Valley. A little bit cheaper, go up north to Anderson Valley and Mendocino County. Wonderful stuff coming out of there as well. Good?
Good.
Okay, excellent. I just finished Harlan Coben's 6 Years. I'm not going to review it maybe for a future episode, but this is on our Lucky Break shelf. Swing by the library next couple days. 11 new titles, Mary, is that what it is? 11 new titles coming down on Lucky Break Shelf starting tomorrow, which is will be April 9th, in case whenever you're watching this. So we got a lot of new stuff coming into the library. That's it. Thank you for joining us as always, and we will see you around the stacks.